This video is a continuation from the previous bank account video. We are actually going to test the bank account class that was just discussed. So if you want to follow along, I've uploaded both of the Python files, and feel free to download them and run this program. So this is from section 10.2 in the book, and page 435, and then on 436 they have an account test Python file similar to what I've created. Theirs has a little more detail. I kind of trimmed out the detail and the formatting just so we can really focus on the concepts that are new for object-oriented programming. So first thing I did to notice how these are in two separate files. I have my test over here, a main method that's actually testing this, and then I have the bank account that we talked about in the previous video. That's just, you don't have to put them in two separate files, but it helps keep things organized, and I prefer it. It's also good practice. Notice that these two files, account test and bank account.py, are in the same folder, or at least the same location in a file directory somewhere. That's important. It's important because whenever you're actually testing it, the first thing you have to do is you have to import this bank account class. And what this import statement is doing is it is importing all the files, or actually the file that is named bank account. And for that to find it, I'm pretty sure that they have to be in the same folder. You might be able to play around with that, and that may not be true, but to be safe, it's always easy. Just put them in the same folder, or on your desktop, it'll be able to find them. So when you import, it can find that bank account. So that brings me to the first point. If you have them in two separate files, you always have to begin with the import statement. And that is basically telling this Python program here that, hey, I am going to use the bank account class. All right, so let's actually talk about how to use the class. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to define a starting balance variable, and we're going to choose a simple number. We're going to say we have $100 as a starting balance in our bank account. So to create a new bank account object, or to instantiate a bank account object, we use this syntax here. So notice I have bank account, what I've imported, dot, so this is telling Python we're choosing from the file bank account, and I want to instantiate the bank account object. Notice how I've got all the case the same here in either file. So we're creating a new bank account object, and remember I said on the last video, whenever you create a new object, this initialize function is going to be called. And whatever you pass in when you're creating a new object gets passed into the initialize function as this second parameter. So it's a little bit strange, and we'll talk about the self in just a minute, but what we've done is we've created a new bank account class, and this is going to set this self.__balance, there are two underscores here, to be 100, because I passed in 100 in the constructor. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want to deposit some money in this bank account. So I have my instance of the bank account, and I have to set it equal to a variable. So now this variable savings holds a reference to that object. So I use this savings variable as I would the class object to make calls to interact with that object. So if I want to call the deposit method on the object, I will say savings.deposit and passing in $50. Let's say I want to deposit $50. So that will instantiate this function here. Or not instantiate, it will call this function. Notice one thing though, it's a little weird, and this is what I was going to mention just a second ago. it looks like this function has two parameters, right? It looks like it has the self parameter and the amount parameter. But as I talked about in the previous video, the self is necessary as the first parameter for any function on a class. And Python will pretty much ignore this parameter. So when you pass in this 50, it's actually getting passed in the amount position, in that second parameter position. Okay, so when I call deposit, 50 is passed in as the amount gets added to the balance. So then I have a print statement, and I'm going to print balance after 50 deposit, and I'm going to call savings.getBalance. So this is a test. Our balance should be of $150 at this point because we started out with 100, we deposited 50, should be 150 here, and getBalance is simply returns self.__balance. The next method I call is withdraw. Withdraw $25, and it will do the same thing. It will pass that 25 into the second parameter position, so I know I can subtract the amount from my balance here. And then when I print it out, it should say 150 minus 25 is 125. So hopefully this prints out 150, this prints out 125. So let's test, make sure it's working properly. So here we go, we have balance after 50 is 150, and balance after 25 withdrawal is 25, and it looks like I've made a silly mistake on this formatting here. Let's just remove that so I can not confuse anyone. So here we go. Now, why am I putting two underscores in front of this balance? So what this is doing is it's hiding this balance variable from any sort of outside caller. So let me show you what I mean by that. So down here, if I try to, let's print. Let's say I want to print savings.__balance. Let's see what will happen there. Let's save this, run module. Notice I get an exception, and it says bank account object has no attribute __balance. Well, that's kind of strange because I can see it. It's right there. Well, what the __ does is it tells, Python knows that is a private variable, meaning it's not accessible to the outside of the class. The only way to access this balance is through these methods that I've defined. So deposit, withdraw, and getBalance. So hopefully that makes sense. And actually bank account is a great example to talk about why that's important, because we don't want a program to be able to interact with your balance unless it goes through these methods, a very specific method. So that's very important because your balance is your most important thing that you can have for your bank account. You don't want any other program interacting with that balance in a way that you haven't specified is allowed. And the only two ways we've specified is allowed is a withdrawal or a deposit. So you could have more logic in here that controls when it's allowed and things like that. Especially for withdrawal, you can have this logic in here to ensure a negative amount is never going to be allowed. So I think that's about it as far as the basic test of a class. Of course, if you have any questions about object-oriented programming, or you want to see another section of the book, you want to see a lecture for another section of the book, please reach out to me, and I will definitely record one for you.